This is probably the last video I'm making, and I decided I would. Well, first of all, let's turn this down. I'm right up on it. Doesn't need to be that loud because I'm right up on it. So, this is the last video I'm doing, and it's probably going to be the longest video I'm going to do because I'm going to sit here and try and read as much as this is possible. All right, and for this, I'm going to pull this out. Again, there will be probably links in the comments below, but we're going to go ahead and talk about this. I'm going to zoom in. This is going to be hard to read otherwise. So, I know there's some people who would be insulted by this, and they're going to go like, oh, what do you want them to make for us specifically? Or blah, 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 run their mouths. I'm not one of those guys. I'm going to consider what they have to say. So, here we go. Nobody's making games for the retired people. The growing yet underserved market for gray gamers. Let me say before we get into this that there are games out there that old people play. I play Minecraft. It's not for everybody my age, but I play them. But as I get older, a lot of games do get... I've noticed I don't want to play them. I don't want to pay for or play them because they're just too much. Get out of here, bug. They're just too overwhelming. Right? So, we're at a point where I have a hard time with newer games. And I think that's what they're talking about. It gets harder for you when you start losing your sight. You have to get sleep. Things feel overwhelming and complex, which is true. That's why I like Minecraft. It's not too complex. The growing yet underserved market for gray gamers. You can tell I'm kind of out of it. Games are overwhelmingly made by and marketed to younger generations, argue analysts, while the older demographic is being ignored. And I would agree with this. Yeah, like the stuff I want to play is not made anymore. I would argue the stuff that I had paid for was like Shovel Knight. I love Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight's awesome, and I want to get Mina the Howler. Howler. I don't have the money yet. $20 and I don't have it. Life is hard. Anyhow. Back in February, this is such a long fucking article, man. It's so much to read. But I'm going to try and get through it as quickly as possible. I just feel like reading a good chunk of it. So yeah, back in February, Machine Games head Jerk Gustafsson. Are you serious? It's not Jack. Is his name actually Jerk? I get the feeling it's not. Emphasized to game. I bet it was an autocorrect and they need to fix it. Emphasized to a gamesindustry.biz that the video games market still has room to grow. I am 54 years old now, he said, and I grew up with games, but I think I was also the first generation that grew up with games. So when I'm going into retirement, when I'm 70 years old, that should be the peak. That should be the peak of our install base. That should be the peak of people that have actually grown up playing games on a daily basis. And he's true. I'm 45. I'll be 46 in August. I'm pushing 50. So I get what he's saying. Like, we still play games. We still want to buy games. I would argue it has to do with price. We're smarter. We got older and we were like, these prices are kind of nuts. I'm not paying for that. But to make something new for the older market, I think there's already indie devs that kind of do that. That's why I brought up Shovel Knight and Mina the Howler and a lot of indie games. Just, we kind of have that, right? But I digress. I'll keep going. I grew up with the games, but I think I was also the first generation that grew up with games. So when I'm going into retirement, when I'm 70 years old, that should be the peak. Peak install base, peak of people that have actually grown up playing games on a daily basis. Yet the games industry has been slow to serve the growing ranks of gray gamers, older gamers, guys like me. Now, of course, there are people like I'm going to name him right now. Richard Masucci would probably get offended by this. I feel like he might. He's like, oh, you can still play this kind of stuff. Not without help, dude. You had to have help with Elden Ring. There's stuff. Let's just say this. I know this for a fact, and I'm in the same situation. I'm stuck in my ways, and there's stuff that just appeals to me more. You're the same way. I'm sure of that. I'm sure there's just this preference of things you want to play and that you're able to play. You play to completion. And so, yeah, having games made for our base, I think, is necessary. But I'll keep going. Yet the games industry has been slow to serve the growing ranks of great gamers. You have more and more players that are older, maybe 40, 50, 60 years old, said Emmanuel Rosier, director of marketing and television for Newzoo, in the State of the Industry 2026 talk at last week's Nordic Game Conference. And if they are retired, they have even more money. But nobody's making games for the retired people. I mean, maybe not for them, but there are games that we can play. I'm just saying. It's well known that countries such as the United States, Japan, the United Kingdom, and many places in Western Europe have aging populations. According to the UK's Office for National Statistics, around 13% of the UK population was aged 65 or over in 1972. That leapt up to 19% in 2022 and is projected to rise to 27% by 2072. 2072? Jesus Christ, I'll be long gone. Don't you mean 2027? I think they meant 2027. I think they messed up. Maybe not. Maybe that's what they meant. I don't know. Yeah, this is the scale showing how it's just, yeah. By 2031, yeah, fuck. The number of UK gamers aged 55 and over is rising. Importantly, these older people want to play video games. The analyst firm Ampere Analysis told Game Industry Biz that in the UK, there are 6.62 million gamers aged 55 or over in 2025. That figure is projected to rise to 7.32 million by 2031. And across Western Europe as a whole, there were 51.89 million gamers aged 55 plus in 2025, a figure that's set to rise to 56.9 million by 2031. I'll be 51 then, by the way. Analyst Juice Van Durenen, I can't pronounce that. The CEO of Eldora and former head of Superdata, I'm a dumbass, tells Games Industry Biz that developers need to change their thinking to focus on older audience. I don't know about focusing on us, but consider us. Consider our audience more. I don't think we're being considered at all. It's always the younger generation. And I don't know if anybody's noticed, but the younger and younger and younger generation doesn't give two shits about video games. There's a very young generation. A lot of them don't care. They've gotten into other things, picking up hobbies, learning to do craft, music, things like that. And I see it all over Facebook and whatnot. A lot of younger people are coming into the world that just don't give a shit. And part of the reason they don't give a shit is because they see video games, as an old person thing anyways. They see it as a thing that, their parents and grandparents grew up doing, but it's not really for them. They don't want to do what their parents and grandparents did. They don't want to be into what their parents and grandparents were into. And I feel like that's where we are. Developers have been ignoring older gamers for the same reason it took them decades to discover women. He says, the industry has spent 40 years chasing the same narrowly defined audience because it was the safest bet, until everyone was chasing it. Imagine if Hollywood only made movies for 18-year-old men. That's roughly the bet games have been making. I had to kind of skip there and pause it for a second. My mouth was going insanely dry. Okay, the industry has spent 40 years chasing the same narrowly defined audience because it was the safest bet, until Everyone was chasing it. Imagine if Hollywood only made movies for 18-year-old men. That's roughly the bet games have been making. Quote, the opportunity is substantial. The 40 plus segment in the U.S. is on track to grow from 19 billion in 2022 all the way up to 43 billion by 2030. A 132% expansion at a moment when the rest of the industry is shrinking. These are players with the most disposable income. And I would argue that these are the ones who buy for their kids and their grandkids. Like, if you're not appealing to the parents, if you're not appealing to the older generation, then they're not buying the hardware for the newer generation. Who do you think buys shit for their kids? Who do you think is buying shit for their kids and their grandkids? It's the older gamers. They'll get it, and then the kids will want games for it to play, and then they'll get it. My point being is, if you're not appealing to the older audience, who's buying your shit? They're the ones with the income, not these younger ones. And I'm surprised the industry hasn't figured this shit out. So if you're not appealing to older gamers, you're not going to appeal to the potentially younger gamers. Got to pull your heads out your butts. You got to. But the opportunity is substantial. 40% segment, blah blah blah. 132%. Nothing goes past 100%. That's weird. That's a weird way to. I don't know. Maybe I'm confused. Anyhow, industry. When the rest of the industry is shrinking, these are players with the most disposable income, the longest gaming literacy, and the highest brand loyalty. This is true. They are also the least visible in the industry's dashboards because the metrics were built around younger players who compete frequently. Yeah, I don't fucking compete. I don't care about competing in any game. I just want to have some fun, man. I don't want it to be too stressful. There you go. That's why I play Minecraft. That's why I change the rule set a lot in Minecraft. That way I'm having fun and not getting frustrated. Older lifelong gamers don't, but they keep playing and they keep spending. What needs to change is the industry's mindset. An entire generation has now grown up playing video games and is aging into a life stage where they have time, money, and the desire to keep playing. The first publishers to actually see this player will capture a structural advantage. The rest will arrive 10 years late, exactly like they did with women. But like I said, if you appeal to the older ones, you get to the younger ones, because the younger ones, kids don't have money. Parents have money, and there's a lot of parents who are gamers. What are you doing, industry? What are you doing, Nintendo? Of course, right now we're dealing with a lot of crap, but you know what I mean. Catering to the older crowd. Veteran analyst Matthew Ball, who was installed as Xbox new chief strategy officer last month, told the game business back in February that the industry isn't doing a good job engaging older players outside of casual mobile games. Yeah, it's like, I don't give a shit about that. That's for people who aren't like me, who grew up with games. Those mobile games, those weird, quirky puzzlers and everything, those are for people who grew up not playing games, who just casually enjoy a little tinkering on their phone while they're waiting for something in an emergency room or whatever, in an office or something. That's not the same as me or a lot of other people like me. We're not exactly being catered to. We're not being advertised to. They don't care about us. All I want to say is they don't really care about us. That song is about something very different, but still, it just kind of felt right to sing about this point. But they don't. They really don't. We are definitely losing that cohort, he said. He suspects that older gamers are likely to take big breaks between PlayStations. We do. And part of the issue is that games generally aren't good at reorienting players when they come back after a break. This is a mismatch between the general investment in tutorials for the first few minutes. I don't really need a tutorial. I think that's part of the problem. I don't need a tutorial at the beginning of a game. I don't want a tutorial. I don't want a game holding my fucking hands. And that's a problem I have. Older games didn't really hold my hands. You go back and play the first Mega Man X game, it doesn't hold your hand. It kind of teaches by not directly teaching. So I disagree with that. Most games don't lose players after 30 minutes. They lose them much later. You put the controller down, you don't come back. And that's partly because the map has expanded. The tools have expanded. You're like, holy crap, the skill tree. What did I have to prioritize? That I suspect is going to be a lot more important for that older game demographic. Partly because when there's user testing, it's usually not asking how hard is Boss 9 for a 58-year-old who hasn't touched a controller in over 2 weeks. I don't know. I've been seeing old people playing games on YouTube for a while now, and they play some cool shit. So they're the 80-something-year-old grandmother playing games and got what do you call it? You know what I'm talking about. I can't remember what it's called. We're swatted, But, I mean, other than that horrible thing that happened, she's a gamer. So there you go. But how will the older crowd play games? Like, when we ask, what will people be playing next year, we're perhaps asking the wrong questions. Say Larry Cooperman, who was vice president of business development at remake specialist Night Dive Studios until retiring in March. I think the question should come up first is what will we be playing it on? That's a good question. He reckons it's unlikely that gray gamers will be playing on heavily specced out PCs or next generation consoles. Especially given the huge hardware price rises we've seen as of late, of course. If you look at the types of games that people can play on ordinary machines, on the kind of machine that grandma and grandpa have at home that still has AOL dial-up, I should say that, but close. But if you look at that, there are really two categories that are going to benefit. See, here's the thing. People aren't going to keep buying new hardware, especially older people. We get older and we're not spending all that money, but then they keep moving on to new devices. That's my thing right now with not just Sony, but Nintendo too. You have a console that's already been out. There's a ton of people that own it. You try to go to the next console. Why don't you keep catering to that older console? Why don't you keep making some freaking games? For your, like Nintendo, the original Switch. Things aren't going too well right now for the newest hardware. Make games that work on the older hardware. New games working on older hardware, but look better and do better on newer hardware. There you go. That's something I've been thinking about. One is games like Roblox, which run on low-power devices and are essentially platforms in themselves. I don't see them penetrating into that demographic, says Cooperman. But that brings you down to other categories that have been growing, like cozy games, casual games, and retro. And retro has an advantage in that audience in that you don't need the latest computer. That's kind of true. It just depends. He also thinks there's an opportunity to rekindle brands or IPs that appeal to an older demographic, giving the examples of Night Dive's remasters of Turok, Blood, and Star Wars Dark Forces. These are brands that will resonate with that community. I don't want to say that if you say to somebody over 65, oh, it's a Souls-like, they won't understand what you're talking about. That's not completely true, but I get what they're trying to say. But if you mention Star Wars, they go, yes, I know that. I know that brand. And that's true. It comes back to what you know. Andrew Biat, CEO of Blaze Entertainment, the makers of the retro-focused Evercade console family, says that a lot of the company's customers are returning to gaming after a long time away. We find there's a lot of lapsed gamers, he tells GamesIndustry.biz. They really want to re-experience stuff that they did when they were younger. He thinks this group is underserved. If all developers are focused on these huge cinematic experiences and they're aiming at teenagers and people in their early 20s, that kind of age group, then I think they are missing a trick. He adds that in addition to their built-in brand recognition, retro games tend to have an advantage for the older crowd in terms of their relative brevity when compared with modern titles. Older players might have more disposable income, he says, but they may have less time. They've got busy jobs and everything else, and actually, these retro experiences are good for that. Like Cooperman, he reckons the older generation might not necessarily be rushing out to buy expensive gaming hardware, which is why Ablaze offers affordable, entry level devices in the form of the self contained Super Pocket handhelds. I think that's important for this crowd, he says, because they might not be super committed hardware or hardcore gamers, sorry. Importantly, he thinks there's a missed opportunity when it comes to making gaming's rich back catalog more widely available. I've always had a bit of a frustration with the difference between gaming and music and film, Yet says. Music and film is so well curated and accessible, and you can find almost everything from every year using different services. And I think gaming just hasn't really done that, and that's true because there's too much greed driving the industry. There's way too much greed driving the industry, I feel like. And I feel like that's affecting things in that way. Yet Beat emphasizes that retro games aren't the only way to tempt the older crowd. There's also room for new developers. Retro is obviously a natural fit for these types of games, but we do have modern retro as well. We publish stuff from people developing for old systems that are still doing that today. And we also have some indie stuff, which is very retro themed. But I think that there is certainly a growing market and they've got more money. This is true. So, like, I hate saying it, but I am drawn more to games like Shovel Knight and Mina the Howler and whatnot. It might not be an old brand that I recognize, but I recognize the kind of games that I'm looking at, and I see the fun in it, and I want to play it. I need to play. I need to play Shovel Knight again. I love that game. And there are new games being made for older devices, the Genesis and whatnot. We see this stuff happening all the time. And again, we see, and I talked about this in the Sega video I just did. I feel like there's going to be people taking advantage of the new software that's coming out, or that is out, that's being worked on, that's being improved for creating games for older devices. And I think that's going to come in handy for a lot of people. There's money to be made, but you got to know how to do it. Of note, the kinds of marketing that appeal to the younger demographic, like viral TikTok campaigns and glitzy video showcases, might not necessarily cut through to older audiences. I don't know. It kind of cuts through for me. And email is still the most powerful marketing tool for us, says Biat. Our email list is gold. It's how we reach our customers. It's more powerful than our social media channel. That's kind of unusual, isn't it? But there it is. Jack Emmert, I don't know how to say it, who rejoined MMO maker Cryptic Studios as CEO earlier this year, thinks there's a huge opportunity to target older gamers. Give me a 50-year-old every day over a teen, he tells gamesindustry.biz. The 50-year-old has disposable income. The 50-year-old is coming to a point where they have time. They want their childhood back. I'm 57. I still game. I'm going to game in 10 years and probably in another 10 years. But he thinks that the types of games he will play will change as he gets older, and games will have to be designed to accommodate the abilities and desire of older players. I can't do Twitch games for more than 30 minutes at a time because my hands hurt. Or it says, that means that when I'm designing games, I'm going to be thinking about that. And I'm going to be thinking about, well, what does a 60-year-old want to play? What moment in the past do they want to recapture? And that, to me, is vital. Perhaps ironically, the fast-paced 1980s arcade games that have big appeal to players who remember them from their youth are also some of the most difficult for them to play. But Everett points out there are plenty of retro titles that don't require fast reflexes. That's where the old-style RPGs are great, like Baldur's Gate. I would argue the older games like the older Final Fantasies and the original 4 Phantasy Stars, games of that nature, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, those kinds of RPGs that were made for that are going to work out well for people my fucking age. Yet when it comes to accommodating the needs of older players, Emmert thinks the biggest thing that's holding the industry back is that there are so few game designers in the 50 plus age bracket. There are no elder statesmen, and I think this has hurt the industry tremendously. We lose tons of experience consistently because gaming is always focused into a younger demographic. And I don't know whether they consider consciously do it or it's subconscious, but it's just a fact. Everett thinks that because the majority of people making games are younger themselves, they don't necessarily think of the older audience when making them. It's that simple. He says adding that games marketing is overwhelmingly aimed at the younger generation. Give me those 60-year-olds who watch Star Trek, the original series. He concludes, come on down, play Star Trek Online with me. Okay. So, that was all. That was a long ass video. I don't necessarily disagree with this. They point out some good things, but I also realize there's going to be people like Richard Masucci who might be insulted by it. They're not trying to talk badly about me, but even I notice as I get older, I'm struggling with games more. I struggle with the fast-paced stuff. And as much as I love shoot-em-ups, yeah, there's too much coming at me. Even when I was a kid, I felt like there was too much coming at me. Those games are hard. Like, I want to have fun with them and play them, but I feel like the challenge should be the boss, not getting to the boss. You know, and I feel like a lot of games forget that. It shouldn't be on the way to the boss. It should be once you get to the boss. So, yeah, I get they're not trying to talk down to me and be stupid about it and everything, but they are right. And we do have money, but we don't have a lot of money, too. If you're going to make something, I feel like, yeah, the retro is the best way to go. Games that are old or games that are like old games. And that's all I got to say about this video. Thank you for sitting through this. It's almost a 30-minute long video. I did not mean for it to be that long. But this is something I just wanted to talk about. I wanted to read over with you and everything. I wanted to share. Are you getting up in that demographic? Is it hard for you? Do you want games that cater to you more? Do you not really care anymore? Are you like me and you find yourself more likely to sit back and watch TV than mostly anything? Like, I still play games when I can, but every time I sit in my living room and I start to play my Switch, I stop and I go, I'd rather just watch some Crunchyroll. I don't know why. I'm having more fun with that. It's not so stressful. Games have become stressful. Anyhow. That's all I got.